Aural intervals part 2. So, what are we doing today? In the last video, we looked at the diatonic interval list, the perfect intervals, and the major intervals. And in this video, we are going to look at minor intervals and unpack the tritone. Recap the different types of intervals. In previous videos, we've looked at the various different types of intervals. We learnt about major intervals, minor intervals, perfect intervals, diminished intervals, and augmented intervals. In aural interval questions, we use the same terminology. However, we do not use augmented and diminished intervals. These two are written interval terms only. So, our aural interval list looks like this: perfect unison, minor second, major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, the tritone, perfect fifth, minor six, major six, minor seven, major seven, and a perfect octave. In this video, we're going to explore minor intervals and the tritone. But a reminder, let's review how intervals are presented. Intervals in the VCE are commonly presented on the piano, played in the following format. First playing melodically, one note after the other. Second playing block or played together. Third playing melodically again, so notes played one after the other. You therefore have 3 chances to hear the interval and work it out. So, how to work them out? There are many different ways to work out intervals orally. I have found that one of the most fun ways to work them out is by associating them to songs, and that is the method that we will use in these tutorials. The minor second. This interval is the first minor interval in our diatonic interval list. It moves from the tonic or root note of the major scale to the flattened second note of the major scale. We can identify this interval by associating it with the Jaws theme, as the minor second interval is used between the first 2 notes in the tune. The minor third. This interval is the second minor interval in our diatonic interval list. It moves from the tonic root note of the major scale to the flattened third note of the major scale. We can identify this interval by associating it with the song Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple, as the minor third interval is used between the first 2 notes in the tune. The minor sixth. This interval is the third minor interval in our diatonic interval list. It moves from the tonic or root note of the major scale to the flattened 6th note of the major scale. We can identify this interval by associating it with the song The Entertainer by Scott Joplin, as the minor 6th interval is used between the first 2 notes in the tune. The minor 7th. This interval is the 4th minor interval in our diatonic interval list. It moves from the tonic root note of the major scale to the flattened 7th note of the major scale. We can identify this interval by associating it with the song The Winner Takes It All by ABBA, as the minor seventh interval is used between the first few notes in the tune. Now, what is a tritone? There is an interval that appears between the perfect fourth and perfect fifth intervals. As there is no minor interval for a perfect interval, this interval is called an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth interval, as you can see here. As this interval can be written two different ways, we use the name tritone to identify this interval, because there is no way we can tell orally if the interval was an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. The tritone. This interval is the middle or centre interval in our diatonic interval list. It moves from the tonic root note of the major scale to the sharpened fourth or flattened fifth note of the major scale, so an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. We can identify this interval by associating it with the Simpsons opening theme, as the tritone interval is used between the first few notes in the theme. As you can see, the theme is presented in both the augmented fourth and diminished fifth ways. They look different, but they sound the same. And because they sound the same, we use the term tritone to identify this interval. Of course, there are many other songs that you can use to identify these intervals. I've just given you a few to get you started. And a reminder that there's a great website called Earmaster Interval Song Chart Generator that you can access to see what other songs you can use to identify these intervals and build your own interval list. Here's the web link, or you can just Google interval song list and it's the first website that appears in the search results. But to help you, here are all the songs that we have used to identify perfect, major, minor, and the tritone intervals. For a perfect unison, it was the same note twice. For the minor second interval, it was the Jaws theme. For the major second interval, it was Happy Birthday. For the minor third interval, it was Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple. For the major third interval, it was Blister in the Sun by the Violent Femmes. For the perfect fourth interval, it was Advance Australia Fair. For the tritone, it was the Simpsons theme. For the perfect fifth interval, it was Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. For the minor sixth interval, it was The Entertainer by Scott Joplin. For the major sixth interval, it was My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. For the minor seventh interval, The Winner Takes It All by ABBA. For the major seventh interval, the Superman theme. And for the perfect octave, it was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope that you found this video and other videos on aural intervals useful.